Good morning. Yes, it is a little early. Thanks for getting up and getting in here. I really appreciate it. We have some really great keynotes for you today, and then an administrator panel a little later in the morning that I think you're going to want to hear. We have administrators from we have a school principal, we have a district level administrator, we have a couple of county level CTE, AME administrators, and we have a community organizing, arts organizing person. So I think you're going to really want to hear what they have to say, because as all of you know, those administrators play a key role in how we're funded and when we're funded and what we're funded with. I would like to thank the folks from Whatcom for last night's reception. How many of you came to the reception? Okay. And I'd also like to remind you that when you go by the Whatcom table and the Avid table, be sure to sign whatever their sign-in sheet looks like, because the raffle is coming off of their sign-in sheet. So last night somebody walked away with a brand new Whatcom tablet, and so that was really nice. And they're going to be giving away some more equipment, and Avid is going to be giving away some software, Avid software. And this afternoon at the last session, we'll be having those raffles, and also the raffle of Creative Suite. What is it? A one-year subscription to three, and we're giving away 3 of those. So you're going to want to come to that last session. We have a pretty early end time today, and so if you get back to that last session, you'll be eligible for those raffle prizes, and there's some really good stuff. I also wanted to mention, when I first started at the Department of Ed, before I was actually up in Sacramento, when I was still in Los Angeles, I got an email from my boss that said, you're coming up here to be the arts, media, and entertainment consultant, and so you need to go to this conference, because this conference is going to clue you in to what arts, media, and entertainment is really all about. And so I signed up for the Courageous Creativity Conference at Disneyland, so that wasn't too bad. My first gig was to go to Disneyland, and the conference was absolutely amazing, and it was in fact exactly what it was billed as a opportunity to see arts, media, and entertainment in action. The conference is hosted each year by our friends from TCAP. Chris Narmelin, folks can raise their hand, and their conference is now open. The dates are June 21st through 23rd, and it is an amazing experience for CTE teachers as well as VAPA teachers. You get to meet Imagineers, the people who put the Disney stuff together. There's a whole panel of them, and one of the things that they help you understand is what STEAM education is all about. Because the Imagineers are not artists, not all artists. There are some artists there, but there are also people who are architecture people, who are engineering people, and they work together in integrated teams to create the rides and attractions and films that you see coming out of Disney. And so it's an amazing conference. You get to go backstage. One of the things I learned was that for the Parade of Lights or whatever it is, they have a huge warehouse with all the costumes that we got to go through, and they have a $1.2 million budget per year to dry clean the costumes. So it's really a fascinating conference, and you definitely should go. And again, the dates are the 21st through the 23rd. So it's usually right after a lot of schools are out, so you have a little bit of free time, but don't miss that. It's a wonderful conference. And now, without further ado, I'd like to get into this morning's keynotes. We have some really exciting folks to talk to you today. When I was at the department for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, the issue of curriculum came up. Where can I find curriculum? I'm a new CTE teacher, and I'm teaching animation, and I worked in animation briefly, but I don't really have a full curriculum. And I was introduced to this gentleman who had put together an organization called CTE Online. Raise your hand if you've ever accessed CTE Online. It's an unbelievable resource for AME teachers, for all career tech ed teachers, but especially for AME teachers. A number of the people who are part of this conference have helped create model curriculum for CTE Online. And so it's a wonderful place to go if you are trying to figure out what to do next in your classroom, because you don't have to download an entire year's curriculum. You can pick and choose lessons off of CTE Online. You can download it. It has all the resources. It has the tests you give. It has the videos you show in class. It's an amazing resource, and it just has gotten better and better over the years. Well, our next presenter has moved on from CTE Online. He's still connected with them, but he now runs an organization called Navigation North. And that organization has done a lot of work in using technology to improve the educational environment. And so one of the things I wanted him to bring to you today is what the future looks like in educational technology and what things you can use in your classroom that are available to you that you may not know about. So I'd like you to help me welcome Brian Ausland to the stage.
Good morning. Could you say that just a little lower, please? Good morning. Good. Has any presenter ever asked it to say it lower? That just happened. I went to sleep at midnight. I woke up at 4. Just quiet and dark is nice for me right now. My name's Brian Ausland. I'm a recovering high school English theater arts teacher. There's a program for that, you know. But it's 2 steps, not 12. This is kind of a new thing for me. So typically, historically, I do CT Online workshops when I used to run CT Online a few years ago. And I do some workshops from other things, but it's typically trainings and workshops. So this is not going to be about CT Online specifically, although I'm going to draw from some of the CT Online things that we've seen happen with teachers and what we've learned. So I struggled with the title for this presentation, because usually it's just like, here's the CT Online PowerPoint, and here's kind of what we do, and here's how to use the system. Jack described this as an unbelievable system. I would actually call it a very believable system and program. And that's what I want to propose to you today. So I'm going to tell you some true tales about teachers, traditions, and tech, and how these things go together. As Jack mentioned, my team's doing some different work now. This first image is actually an artifact from Smithsonian. They have an entire collection of artifacts just on public education over the last 200 years. So there's somewhere in the vicinity of 48,000 images from classrooms and teachers from across the span of photography. This image is a picture of me. Now, I'm not the tall guy in the top. That's Mr. Muehlrath. That's my 4th grade teacher. I'm the kid kneeling in the front with his arm across his knee. And that's 1979. And this is a teacher who had something against classrooms, because he rarely ever let us stay in a classroom. So typically we were doing stuff like this. As my mom likes to say, in 4th grade, she was one of those moms that helped out on field trips. 38 field trips. We were out of the class 92 days in a school year. Mr. Muehlrath was crazy. But it was 1979. There was a lot of crazy going on with educators back then. Here's some educators today. Ann Brown Crawford. Is Ann in here? Did she make it in here this morning? She probably was. I told her I was going to put her up on the screen. She probably was like, okay, then I'm not coming this morning. Ann's not here? Okay. This is Gail Nichols Ali. Gail is a media design, digital video teacher. She actually teaches quite a few things. Sometimes high schools that have extraordinarily competent teachers get tapped for all kinds of assignments and jobs. So I think she's in charge of yearbook now. As she told me a couple days ago at Q, I saw her at the Q conference. Anybody go to the Q conference in Palm Springs? So I saw her there, and she said, I'm learning the art of saying no to my administrator, finally. Go ahead and applaud for that if you'd like. Unless you're an administrator. Don't ask Gail to do any more if you're an administrator. And this is Liz. I know Liz is here, because Liz gets up in the morning. There's Liz. Liz Moore from Morro Bay. These are their pictures from CT Online. I warned them last night. I'm putting your pictures up, so if you want to modify them, let me know now. I told Anne's like, what is my picture? Is it really good? And I said, well, you did some editing on yours, and it looks like kind of an 80s commercial. And then I asked Liz, I said, Liz, I guess I should ask, because I've seen this picture for years now on CT Online, what's going on? Like, is that? And she said, this is the indoor pool at Hearst Castle. I said, but nobody gets to swim in that pool. She goes, I won it as a prize to be able to swim in that pool. Yeah. So these are teachers' professional profile pictures. That's what I love about it. You're going to be on a professional community of practice, and we think about, what realtors often do with their pictures. They go get these glamour shots done and stuff. And this pretty much sums up teachers to me, all these pictures. This is my last year of teaching. It was 1998. These are my theater arts and English enrichment students, which are, and these students are roughly 70% second language learners. And they were from a little town in Hamilton City, California, which is not a city. It's not even a town, it's not incorporated. And it's about 2 hours north of Sacramento in the Central Valley. And it was a high school of 243 students at the time. These students who, the industry, the prominent industry in that area is agriculture, as most people know from Central Valley. And these students are largely from families that make their living in agricultural trades. And quite a few of them are migrant ed students as well, meaning they would transfer in and out of our school and move with their families. And sometimes that movement took them as far north as Oregon for fishery support, and as far south as into Mexico proper for months at a time. And then we had to track and keep their education going to them over the time. So this is them in San Francisco, and this is the most dressed up I ever saw these kids. We had to show all these boys how to tie a tie, and myself and Mr. Olson. And we had a school bus, and we would have all the girls on the school bus to get into their dresses, because before we were going to the Orpheum Theater to see Phantom of the Opera at the end of the year. So these students live 3.5 hours from that theater. They also live 2 hours from snow and about 3 hours from the ocean. And most of them have never touched snow, never seen the ocean, and never been to a theater in San Francisco proper. So for us, this was a really cool thing that we got to do every year with our theater arts and English enrichment program. And we would transfer them onto the bus, they would get their dresses on, we would take them around the city, let them ride the cable cars, et cetera, and then we'd always get this group picture. This was my last group picture of 7 that I had at this school with these kids. So I like to put this up there just to say, this was my point of professional relevance in my life, in my career. And everything's gone downhill since this. Except today. Today is wonderful. Here's the truth. Cell phones need to be on silence. Oh, that was mine? Okay. The most impactful leaders in education are those leading our classrooms. That's just my quote. That's nobody's important quote. That's my quote, and I'm going to prove that to you right now as I move forward. This is me this last year when we were prototyping a new system for Smithsonian. There's this little museum in Washington, D.C. They're trying to get their name out, so spread it around if you can. It's called the Smithsonian. There's in fact 19 museums. And they got a hold of us a few years ago and said, what would our museum digital resources look like if we made them available for teachers? And I said, that's a good question. Why don't you ask teachers? That would be a novel way to start. They said, sure, how about we do 2 years of research with teachers? And I said, that's a good start. I like that answer. So once we tested with teachers, they said, what would make this better with our prototype that we're developing? I said, well, now we can do the real test. Let's go take it to the kids and let them demolish it a couple times. So this is me in one of the classrooms in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, working with 4th graders. In this one, we were in 72 classrooms across the US working with the kids, and 72 of the teachers came from the 200 that we had researched and worked with for 2 years. Then we went and met their students, and I was supposed to be a researcher with the Smithsonian research team to observe the teacher using this stuff. As soon as the teachers, and I would talk to them, we'd meet them the night before, we'd have dinner. As soon as they're like, I'd say, well, I was a high school classroom teacher and I did this. They're like, oh, well, then you teach tomorrow. There's one problem. These are elementary classrooms. They're terrifying. High schools are so easy compared to these classrooms. So this is us prototyping. This is a picture of me in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia. And this is, I did some work for the State Department, the US State Department. And under the Obama team in their educational initiatives and sciences program, which we did outreach to countries who were interested in replicating our educational models. Now, what had me in Saudi Arabia was some really bad decision-making on my behalf, for one. Had no idea how hot it is there when they say hot. And the other thing is I was there for a month, and in Saudi Arabia, as you've probably heard, they don't have what we would consider a real equal society. So I'll make this completely about me and very selfish. I went a month without seeing any women at all. I saw their forms as they walked in different parts of buildings, but all the educators are male, all the students are male. One of my favorite things, favorite in a really bad way obviously, was we would often see cars driving around full of women, and there would be like an 11-year-old boy at the steering wheel. Because, you know, the law was at the time that women can't drive. They would have to, you would see them literally holding the steering wheel and barely making their way down the road while their 11-year-old or 10-year-old child, who was a male, drove the car filled with their mothers, their aunts, and their grandmothers. It was a culture shock for me. But nonetheless, we were, you know, happy to go do some work with them and say, this is what education looks like. And my second trip there, this was all just before the Arab Spring, and then we weren't really allowed to go there anymore and do any work with Kuwait or Egypt or any of these countries. It was just too dangerous. They actually, our second trip there, they said, is there any, the King Saud regime said, is there anything that you're missing while you're here this next trip? We love what you've done. And I said, I would love an opportunity to work with young ladies and women. And they actually allowed us to do it. But they made us fly them all to Kuwait, so it didn't happen on their soil. So we flew 200 young ladies between 16 and 20 who dreamed of being educators. And in Kuwait, they were allowed to take off their veils. And so I got to engage them as humans, which was wonderful. So we worked for a week with these young ladies, and it was really incredible. However, I have no pictures of them because we weren't allowed to take any pictures of them at all. So here's the men, here's the guys running the education system there. And this is my last picture about the truth about impactful leaders coming from the classroom. This is my first trip as a contractor to the US Department of Education, when it used to be a US Department of Education. Office of Ed Tech, sorry if that hurts you politically. Office of Ed Tech, we get to the office in the morning, we were put in this room where we're gonna meet the current Director of Educational Technology, Richard Culata, who formerly worked for the CIA and was a really interesting guy. But he was, for 7 years in his life at one point, a Spanish teacher at a high school. It's a rare thing for me to find top-level leaders that in education that were also classroom teachers, oddly enough, from what I've found. And that's why I make the point, the real leaders are in the classrooms, or have come from those classrooms. But we walked in, and this isn't a great picture. The point of this picture is there was a smart board, and everybody knows what a smart board is, right? an interactive smartboard. And they had just got this smartboard. And we walk in, and my partner and I sit down. We're both former educators. And I look at this smartboard, and I look at the markers, and they're actual real markers. And I look at the smartboard again, and I stand up, and I go, and it's all permanently marked on this smartboard. In the Office of Ed Tech in Washington, D.C., and what I love is this, I kind of created so you can't zoom, but it actually, on the smartboard, just across from my eyes, it says in green, Richard, 703-609-2888. It's the director of Ed Tech's personal cell phone, permanently written with a bunch of other garble. And we tried to decipher what the meeting was about that made this stuff. And so then they came in the room, and I said, so this is funny. And they said, yeah, please don't get a picture of that. And I already had, so that's why you're seeing it now. As soon as I saw it, I told my partner, get my phone, get a picture of me standing by the smartboard, because I'm going to show this with every teacher I ever get a chance to. And I said, what meeting is this from? And they said, it's from like 8 meetings. We just have to kind of keep writing over stuff. Leadership exists in the classroom. It's where real leadership and impact happens. So here's some things. Teachers, there's 80,000 high school teachers in California. 23,000 of those are CTE teachers. All the sectors, all the 58 pathways. So, not sure why you're applauding that. It's just a number. It's just a fact. Okay. Hold it. Let's wait till I do something really cool, okay? CT Online has 70,000 registered California teachers that in some way, shape, or form are interested in creating or sharing curriculum, or both. Here's the deal, though. Only 37,000 of those are California teachers, because the system is available to any teachers anywhere just to come in and use, although we don't go support it. We have a pretty large community outside of California. But there's 37,000 in California, and it's a CTE system, but we don't have 37,000 CTE teachers. So what's the deal with that number? Well, for the last year now, 2/3 of all new teachers, we're seeing about 200 to 250 new teachers signing up a day. Teachers visiting just to get curriculum, not create account, is about 3,000 a day in California. Another 3,500 a day outside of California. So in California, what we've seen is in our local in-state registration the last year and a half, 2/3 of the teachers signing up for CT Online are academic core. English, math, history, or science. Yeah, here they come again. They're here. And we're happy to have them, because there isn't a comparable system for them to do the type of stuff I'm about to show you. By the way, there's community groups within CT Online, and the AME group is 4,066 educators. It's one of our largest industry sector groups. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit. This is kind of what's happened. This is how I want to frame this out. I'm going to start real simple. There was a project in CT Online that was done about 5 years ago. And it was on designing and caring for the human brain. And it was an anatomy teacher and a media design arts teacher who did anatomical design as part of the project. The art of old style anatomical design, which was really cool. And a sports physiology PE teacher teamed up. And they did this lesson, and it had all kinds of cool stuff. They did a project. But we saw this picture in the lesson plan. And we couldn't tell what it was exactly, and of course we did what everybody does. We just started looking at the pictures and we didn't read what the lesson was. So we look at this picture, we're like, what's going on? Is this a culinary program? So I thought they were culinary hats, perhaps. And as soon as we thought it was a culinary class, my colleagues who were also reviewers said, we don't want to review that one. We don't want to review a culinary one. We want like a robotics one. And I'm like, okay, so I'll review this one. What those things are Burger King crowns with a brain diagram anatomically designed wrapped around them. So when they put them on their heads, it identifies their entire brain and all the parts of their brain. And then the teacher would have them watch videos, sports videos, where different athletes in different sports were hurt. Like Reggie Bush, when he was running for the Saints in the playoff game against Philadelphia Eagles. In the lesson, you click on it, you see the video, you see Reggie Bush get hit very hard, but he doesn't get hit in the head. But what do we know about those hits now that we didn't know when this lesson was developed, or they were, at least some people knew, right? But we're holding on to that information. And when he gets hit, he tries to walk off the field and he keeps going to his hands and knees and having to crawl. And these kids would then watch the video and they would point to what part of his brain was suffering injury at that moment. Because there wasn't physical pain. He was able to get up, but he couldn't orient himself. And they could show you exactly what part of their brain had been affected by that hit. And in fact, it was his own brain hitting the back of his own skull from the impact of being hit in the midsection. And we saw this, and I said, I love this because, one, there's no technology, and I'm down for that. But it's interesting. It's a great way to teach this concept. It involves all three of these teachers, and the teacher stopped and went into Burger King and said, I need 60 of these Burger King crowns. Burger King, of course, as you know, probably said, going to teenagers, take 100, right? That's who consumes our stuff. And so a couple years later, I'm sharing this lesson to these teachers who are part of our institute. And this guy, Armando Gonzalez, who's up in Long Beach, who's a biotech teacher at an academy there, I get done presenting, I said, we're looking for people to develop lessons that are like this, that are very creative, and we want to teach outside the textbook. I want teacher creativity and teacher design that other teachers can take and use. And we showed this in a couple other model lessons that were really cool. Some had tech, some had this, but this is what we called the Burger King crown lesson. We got done, and he called me over to his team's table. This is day one of a 2-day institute that we flew them to Sacramento from Long Beach, his team. And they're all going to get stipends. They're going to, if you've done CT Online, everybody gets paid, right? So he pulls me over and he said, listen, I'm not sure we should be here. I'm just telling you right now, that thing you just showed us with the Burger King crown, I am definitely not a Burger King crown type of teacher. I'm not the Burger King crown teacher. He's like, I teach science out of my textbook. I go chapter by chapter by chapter. And he said, we're willing to leave today. You need not pay our hotel room another night. You need not pay us our stipends. And I said, you're going to hear a lot and see a lot from other teachers in this room the next 2 days. How about you just stay and make it a PD thing? How about you just stay and listen and contribute where you can? Can you click on that Immortal Life link? This is what his team ended up making, the team that was about to leave. They made a project on the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks, science and ethics project that integrated video. The final projects were PSA videos his students developed while reading Henrietta Lacks. Is anybody familiar with the story of Henrietta Lacks, whose cells were illegally harvested? And that's what all of our cellular knowledge is based on today. And her, a poor black family in which the mother's cells were harvested without her knowing. She passed away, and the family. There's a film coming out that Oprah Winfrey's doing on this. It's an incredible story. They read that in English. They did cellular biology and bacteria studies. They did the math computations for this. They did a science ethics piece, and then in the end, they made PSA videos about health and medical ethics to inform populations that don't speak English as their first language, to inform them of their medical rights. These are what children did when this man, who saw himself as not a Burger King crown teacher, stopped for a day and expressed his leadership in curriculum. Let's go back, just close that out. Armando Gonzalez is a curricular superhero. How do we construct meaning beyond mere words? A project on semiotics, word meaning, and short film development. I love these things because if you read the standards that are supported, there's all the CT standards are always identified, but I pull out the CCSS, ELA, and math and NGSS because they're very boring to read. They are not lively. They are not engaging. Determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in the text, including figurative and connotative meanings. And 16-year-old starts snoring on cue. Vocab acquisition and use. Verify preliminary determination of the meaning of a word or phrase. This is a lesson Anne produced a long time ago, years ago, in our project when we first started. Just a few years ago, yeah. Probably 6 or 7 or more, I always forget. Yeah. This is what our lesson looks like. Go ahead and click on words. Let's go down. We're going to try this out. Let's go down to the link on right there on reflecting on the words. So Anne put this YouTube video up to help her students understand what those standards mean in the context of what she was teaching. Go ahead and click play. We're gonna see if we can figure this out together.
Packers coming off the corner here. The end is pension.
Play ball!
What's the word? Play. Go ahead and click play, and let's click submit. Let's try the next one. Anybody getting it? It was below. All right, go ahead. Let's do a couple more. These are pretty fun.
Right! You breaking up, man. I can't hear you.
That's the worst break right there. We've all been there, on one side of that bed or the other, right there. Some of us find ourselves on just one side of it continuously. Good morning, San Diego. What's the word? All right, let's just stop. Let's stop with that, and we'll clear out of this. Go ahead and let's exit out of this. Hello. Would you ever find that approach in a textbook? You will never find that approach in a textbook. There is only one actor in this space that will come up with those types of ideas. A classroom teacher. A classroom teacher. That's the point of the work we've been trying to do for years. All the solutions we need to tend to tie back to student engagement or disengagement. A new report came out in Gallup last year, a study of 900,000 students over 4 years, ranging in grades from 5 through 12. Student engagement percentage at grade 5, students that identified themselves as regularly engaged on a weekly basis at school, was 78% in 5th grade. 78% were regularly engaged. That's not a bad number, but it's not great. 5th grade. By 8th grade, that number became 45%. Engaged. That means 55% consider themselves highly disinterested, or the indicators were highly disinterested or completely disengaged. 55%. By 12th grade, the number of students engaged is 13%. That's your epidemic. So every time I go to a workshop and we look at things like data or attendance software or a PD session on Socratic seminar, there's a number of things. I value those things. I work with a lot of people who do a lot of good work with those things. What I don't see, and I know why, because it's not easy, is who's putting together training for and helping us learn how to better engage, particularly our 8th through 12th graders? Who's doing that? Well, I can tell you, unless the people doing it are people who do it every single day in the classroom, then we've got the wrong people on stage trying to train other people to do it. All a CT Online is us saying, we're going to get out of the way and let teachers come up and basically say, this is what I do. This is what Ann did to take this very mundane, possibly mundane thing, and she said, I'm starting with this video, and I'm going to have the kids guess at these words, and then she has them actually make these short films using their own words that have multiple meanings to visually depict. And by the way, so Ann has some fabulous, incredible projects and lessons, but I intentionally picked one of hers that was early on in the project because it was just simple. Because I don't like to show stuff that's just over the top that leaves people going, I can't do that. What she did was very simple and made it engaging. Cinematograph. Someone else's shoes. This is Gail's from La Cañada High and her team. We never see ourselves Other people form a perception of who we are. Can a photograph see inside your soul? Can a photograph see your dreams or fears? That's Gail. This is what her project and her team looks like. Go ahead and click on Cinematograph. They watched a number of haikus and videos on haikus. Just go to the last one. Let's go to the last one. Thank you. Go down to the bottom. She had her students create cinemagraphs that were based on their haikus. So this is one of her students, Ethan. Here's his haiku. Ethan can bust moves, where before he would just watch, but jams all day now. Has anybody had students develop these before in digital media, digital photography? Okay. There's one more down below. I love this one. Former English teacher, so I love the haiku, of course, and the media is fine too. Lionel will wait here to offer his heart to her and then share some lunch. Go get it, Lionel. I hope he doesn't end up as part of that break video. All right, go back. Let's go back to the thing. This is what it looks like to engage students. Okay, this is what it looks like. Picturing social justice. This is Liz Moore's team developed this. They were having their students develop social justice posters based on their own topics relevant to teens. This is a piece of one of their students' artwork on prioritizing and protecting LGBT youth and homeless youth. Liz doesn't recognize this piece. 2 months ago, we were touring a new charter high school in North San Diego County out of Escondido, close to Stone Brewery, from what I hear. There's Brian's point of relevance. This and a number of these peppered the walls of one of the hallways that we were at. I went and found the teacher. We had another team there that was looking at this school and seeing what they were doing. I went and found this teacher and I said, what was the project that made these? And she goes, oh, we've got all these projects we're using online. And I said, interesting, like what's the website? I'm always interested in looking at other people's websites and how they do it. She pulled up CT Online and Liz's lesson. And that's what her students are producing, because Liz and her team shared their curriculum model in this environment. And I said, I know this lady. And she's like, cool. Tell her and her team we said thanks. It's an awesome project. So there you go, Liz. There's Liz. Arts, media, entertainment community in CT Online, 563 lessons, 41 projects and outlines. There's 4,066 educators. If we took that community, it would take, and we asked them to build out 4 year-long courses for 4 separate pathways. That would be 2,880 lessons. That means everyone would have to produce 3/4 of a lesson plan to completely replace textbooks for an entire high school curriculum for free and make it available. In my ideal world, we would have all curriculum developed by highly competent, engaging teachers that would share freely to everyone else. Every other industry does that. No doctors show up to work and just go, I wonder how I'm going to do this today. Let me just spin something up. Maybe I'll go by, you want your doctor going by the textbook? No, think outside the box, think outside the textbook. Let's look at some options here. There is no other industry around still that takes their professionals and says, go figure this out in an isolated way on your own. We're the only profession that does that still. It's insane. And all the value of what we need in the classrooms resides in the heads of the people that work in classrooms every day. That's my premise, that's my point. Later on today, I'm going to then show how we convinced the Smithsonian that teachers were the experts when I do a presentation called Hack the Smithsonian. And I got to tell you, it took some doing. It took some doing. And the only thing I can tell you is what I want from you is, besides 3/4 of a lesson plan, so we can get a curriculum developed out, that is ingrained in rich teacher expertise and culture, is when you go to PD, when you do projects that have you looking at curriculum, developing curriculum, which is what PD should be wrapped around. Advocate for that curriculum to be documented and disseminated out to others. I don't want to see one more binder of lesson plans somewhere. Because when I go there, and don't put it on a DVD or put it up online as PDFs and tell me we just use technology to innovate curriculum. You just took a print document and you made an electronic version of it. Okay, we're better at that. We deserve more than that. So advocate for this type of modification, advocate for this type of effort so that we can help one another. Because we have a few people in the room right now. How many people developed lessons on CT Online and have published them in here? Because I've seen some of you at workshops. Okay, that project's still going. That project was scheduled to be cut a month ago, CT Online. We just basically got a hold of Jack and his brother Clay, and we said, who wants to tell 70,000 teachers that their stuff's gone? Give us the name and the email, and we'll put it right on the front site, right at the front of the site on July 1. All of a sudden, funding came available. What? That's my story. I'm taking it to the streets, folks. This is what I want to do. I hope you follow me. Thank you.
Another hand for Brian Ausland, please. And so this is why I'm kind of in awe when I stand up here and look at you. Because you guys are the guys who make this happen. You're the ones whose heads this information is in. And it's critical that you engage with programs like CTE Online and other places where you can share your genius, because that genius is needed across the arts, media, and entertainment industry sector. I'd like now to bring somebody to the stage to share with you their experience in the real world. I first met this individual when she was a 9th grader at the school where I taught. And she was a really focused and self-starting student. She was in 9th grade. She came into my drama program. She auditioned for a show. She got a part right away. And we've been connected ever since. And she's one of the people who is responsible for one of the real joys in my life, in that when she was graduating, or actually when I was leaving teaching and going to the Department of Education, people ask me at the department all the time, do you miss the classroom? And I tell them every single day, every day. And I was leaving the classroom and I said, can I have your email? And she said, Mitch, nobody does email. You need to get a Facebook account. And as a lot of you know, one of the joys is staying connected with your students through Facebook. And that was, so an introduction to technology from one of my students. And she has gone on to NYU and studied and earned her degree there. We had numerous conversations about communication. What is communication? You need to be a theater student. And she said it's way bigger than that. And she is now working in special visual effects at Carbon VFX, and I would like her to come to the stage and tell you her story. Please welcome Devin Irete.
Hi. All right. Hi, everybody. It's been a pleasure being here the last couple days and watching all of you guys. It's really nice to see teachers that are like Jack, who really care about what they're doing. So thank you, Jack and Chris, for having me here. Let's see how this works. Yeah, so as Jack said, I was really into drama in high school, and I took it into college with me and knew that it was a little bit bigger than that, like I wasn't going to be Jennifer Aniston or anything. So I just want to share with you a few stories about things I've learned along the way, a little bit about the industry that I'm in, which is advertising, which is a little unusual, kind of a dirty word, but just want to show you that everything you're teaching is applicable beyond the TV and film sort of end goal that most kids carry. So, where am I? So that's our little breakdown about me, the workflows, and then some bigger lessons I hope you can take away from my little speech. So that's me at 5 years old. We're going with Brian's theme of personal photos. The story, as my mom tells it, is she put me on stage for a preschool recital, and I freaked out. I threw myself on the ground crying, and she picked me up and threw me right into a dance class where I could just pirouette all the fears away. And it worked, because I'm here, only kind of nervous, so that's pretty good. Let's see. This is me at like 7. So as a sidebar, I do come from a family that works in the industry, so the apple doesn't fall far. I'm on set here operating my dad's Philips something camera. They didn't call the union on me, thank goodness. So there's that. Let's see. This is a photo from our high school production of Anything Goes, which I played Reno Sweeney, thanks to Jack Mitchell. Saw all my dreams come true. As you can see, our cast was quite small. We were very enthusiastic, and we were allowed to play a really active role in the program, which kind of kept my drive going when, like, math class gave me a C, for example. Let's see, what am I missing here? Oh, in high school, we also had a really great mentorship program with the local talent agency, and through that, I was able to leave high school and go straight into a paid internship, which is a really unusual opportunity for a high school student, but it showed me that just having a brain and a will can get you really far. So from there, I went on to NYU. I spent my freshman year in Florence, Italy, which was a mixture of I had crappy SAT scores and can speak decently in a couple second languages. Italian was one of them. So while I was there, I was super bored, which is so sad to say. But I took it upon myself to put up a production of Lysistrata, as you can tell from the balloon phalluses on my cast here. It was a challenge because these kids signed up to drink wine and sit in the olive orchard, and yet they managed to come to rehearsal and listen to a freshman tell them where to stand and find their light. And as you can imagine, through that experience, I was bit with the producer bug. Let's see, enough of that. So for me, college was mostly just a way to get to New York City and live and work. I used to stack my classes every semester, so I would only have to go to school like 1 or 2 days per week, and I found an internship or a job every semester. I just wouldn't stop. My favorite job that I got was selling t-shirts and CDs and candy bars to the tourists who would come see Broadway shows, which was a horrible job. I think I made $30 a day, but I got to see a lot of shows for free, which was a real treat. It also taught me how to talk to people I don't know, and how to ask them for their money and have them give it to me, which, wanting to be a producer down the line, I knew was going to be a skill that I really needed to have. A little bit about my schoolwork and talking about how courses and how programs can really help kids. My favorite class was in the film school, even though I wasn't a film major. We were put into groups and told to develop an idea for a script, for a miniseries or a TV show. We had to stand up in front of the class and pitch it. And the rest of the class was separated into network executives or producers, and the aim was to get your pitch bought and produced and picked up. And so it was all fake, obviously, but it really taught us a lot about the life of a show and what goes into it beyond just writing the script and starring in it. Let's see. So all of this is trying to say that though I was discouraged often by not getting jobs that I wanted, I was always able to find an outlet in the arts that kept me going. So now in advertising, I've moved on to producing PSAs and commercials and live streams and all kinds of nonsense that brands want to pay for. Here is, ooh, that's irrelevant. Here's a chart that I stole from the 2015 Otis report on the creative economy in California. There's a whole page in there about the communication arts, which is where advertising lives. As you can see, it is a growing industry, and it does have a lot of, can you see the numbers? Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, it's got a lot of jobs. There's so many jobs that your kids would want. I'm just here to hawk them to you. Let's see. So within that, I wanted to go through just quickly the workflow of the advertising system. So at the top, of course, you have brands, Skittles or AT&T or whatever. And underneath that are the advertising agencies, which is your Don Draper type of person. There's a lot of people there that are very creative individuals, and their job solely is to generate ideas. So that's creators like graphic designers, motion graphics designers, copywriters, etc. Within that, of course, there's their support team, the producers, and the business side, the more entrepreneurial folks that have to decide when something should air, if it's more appropriate for Christmas or the Super Bowl, and all of that. And then below that, of course, are the vendors, which is where I've spent my career. Excuse me. That's production, which is the directors and producers and your camera guy, your lighting technician, your storyboard artist, all of those sorts of crafts. And then there's post-production, which is where I am now, which is editing or sound design, visual effects, coloring or grading your film. And lastly, it's a more technical job, which is trafficking, which is when we ship our commercials to be aired. There's a company out there that decides which channels it goes to, what time it airs, etc. So, from there, doesn't want to work, guys. Anyways. So I was thinking, what could college and high school students mostly do from their homes or from their classrooms that can kind of keep them going, or maybe start a fire that will keep going past when they're in your classroom. And if I could get my next slide, you'd have a visual for it. But anyways, it is to reach out. One thing I wish I'd known earlier is that people do want to hear feedback about their own work. So it's great to have students take it upon themselves and just write a letter and say, hey, I watched your movie, I read your article, I loved what you did, my name is Devin, I really enjoy doing that as well, do you have any advice? Maybe they won't hear anything back, maybe they will, but the lesson is to just let go and allow themselves to reach out. Beyond that, this is really important, can we get it working? The next one would be to read the trades, and when this slide comes up, if you're interested in them, I put a bunch of logos from the different trades that I read, which are industry papers that write articles about what cameras are being used, which programs were used to do which visual effects, which director is working now, and all those sorts of things, and how much things were made for, and which companies did them so that they can stock down emails and email producers and find internships. So that's something that I do daily and I think is really, really important for students to get in the habit of. There was one more. Oh, and the other thing is just to watch and take in as much as they can. I sit and watch TV at home constantly, and I watch the commercials, and my boyfriend hates me for it, but that's my industry, and everyone I see is relevant to what I'm currently working on, because I don't want to be the person that suggests a redundant idea. So, hopefully we get that up, but we'll keep moving. So my 3 points today center around, firstly, creative problem solving, which is what I consider my job entirely, and I'm sure a lot of you would as well. And teaching that is difficult, but I think through group work and sort of outside the box, oh, there we go, very important. So thinking outside the box and maybe presenting challenges that you know it does not have a linear path to solution is something that I wish I had been demonstrated earlier and more straightforward, and been able to walk away going, that was hard, but I figured it out. On that, there we go. Oh, lastly, is also you just have to commit to the team effort. Knowing that you're realizing someone else's idea is something that is hard to get over when you're young, but eventually, once you reap the benefits of seeing your hard work, no matter whose idea it was, played out, it's really special and it's no less satisfying. So this is an example of creative problem solving. This was my desk for like 2 days last year. Oops, oh no, on a shoot. Either way, it's the back of a U-Haul. You can see my chair and my pile of time cards that I was prepping for my crew, which they were inside our location setting up. I mean, this was terribly uncomfortable, but I loved my job because everyone there was doing what they wanted to be doing, which was at the moment shooting a commercial for some sort of dental product, whatever. Let's see. So, moving on. Yes. Feeling safe enough to fail. In high school, this is incredibly important and something that our program allowed us to do. We were just talking earlier about a peer of mine who is now going into a master's degree in some sort of movement theater thing that I find really odd, but he's in love with it, and in high school, he didn't talk like his freshman year. And I hope you're not watching this. Sorry about that. But yeah, he saw through our program a major transformation just in the 4 years that I knew him, and he's still a very close friend of mine. So being safe enough to fail and fostering that environment for your students is insurmountable to them being able to get back up and keep exploring and keep trying. So art, they should know, can and should be revisionary. It's not going to be perfect the first time, and it shouldn't be. So on that point, is that right? Maybe?
In 38 minutes, your favorite show is ending forever. You know what's coming. A show hole. The fear of having nothing left to watch takes hold. Buried alive by finale phobia. Is this how it ends? Choking on couch corn? No. You've got Amazon Fire TV. It suggests new faith so you can binge bravely. Ha 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 ha! So long, showhole!
Okay, so thank you. I produced this commercial. This was just a few months ago, and my coworkers and I still joke about this job. We call it the show hole, simply because it seems like a pretty straightforward ad. There's a guy, he gets sucked into an imaginary world, the sofa eats him, and he escapes because of all the options he has to watch on his Amazon streaming thing. Hooray for him. Believe it or not, that took so many revisions. The text on the show hole took, I think, 30 tries to get until the client was happy with it. Yeah, exactly. Like, how could you possibly take that long? It is really frustrating, but knowing that, I mean, yes, obviously it's a job, but knowing that it's an art, and someone in that chain of command sees this as like an opus, and that you're doing their job, and your job is to realize their idea the best way possible. You have to kind of have that attitude of like, it goes on until it's perfect. And being okay with that is really important. Let's see, so what's next? I keep telling you that advertising is this big, great thing, and that it's moving in all directions, and everyone can get a job in it. And to some effect, that is kind of true. So I have a few other spots that I want to share with you that I've worked on in the past year, just to keep it relevant. That'll kind of show you what advertising can run the gamut of outside of just like a plain TV commercial. So smaller screens, bigger experiences. So let's see if this one works.
Split your big lip, then I do it again.
So that's another spot. I thought this would be a great kind of combo for everybody because I know that your teaching pathways are very varied here. So this is a commercial that we were hired to work on with a few other visual effects companies. So my office in Los Angeles, our Chicago office, and a couple others in LA who are not affiliated with me, so I won't talk about them. So they obviously did a live action shoot with those beautiful actors, so that's a pathway. This is an advertisement for an Oculus game system, which is super fun, and if you have the opportunity to bring one into your classroom, do it. It's very cool, and only like one student will probably puke, so it's not that bad. The thing about this one was we were given game assets. So the designers of the game said, oh, here's what we have built so far, like a basketball and like a rack and some hands. Please make this game look just ever so slightly better than the real one. So we had to reanimate them, retexture them. We used mostly Maya, After Effects, Autodesk to kind of achieve that. The specific sections that my team worked on was the basketball one, as I mentioned, as well as the kind of spooky cave zombie one where the guy's like plucking things out of his head. So on that job, we had like a team of 8 working for about a month, really late nights sometimes, trying to get this together and get it out the door. So that was a very cool project. That kind of is a TV commercial, but it's meant to sort of branch between that visual effects Oculus world and a standard sort of TV thing. The next one is very cool. I'm very proud of it, and it shows sort of the larger scale projects that we get asked to work on sometimes, and the ways that advertising is kind of branching out of the box, pun intended. I'm going to talk over this one because it's pretty boring. So I'm just being honest. I think it's an iPhone video from a project that was how it kind of works like this. It's a dome, a 360 dome that we were tasked with building in 3D, in 360, in I think like 10K resolution, which is enormous. The Arthur Ashe Stadium, where the US Open takes place every year in New York. Fill that stadium with a crowd, put a bunch of jumbotrons up, and then mix in a tennis player. I doubt you can even see him, but on the other side of the court, not where David, the director guy, is standing here, he's about to serve that ball. The player at the other end, who is a real guy, who we had to composite in later, misses, and you win. You've activated the program with the racket that you're holding, and your experience of getting to look around the stadium is captured on camera. They throw your face up on the jumbotron in the stadium, the fake one, and you walk out with a souvenir. It was a really difficult project because none of my group had done it before. We had to just kind of wing it and figure out with the rest of the vendors, which was a projectionist and a sound group, and the director, of course, how to do it and like which codec to ship our assets in and how many overlapping seams were needed to sort of make this look best in this completely fabricated arena of a white dome. So that was a really great experience for me, and I thought it was pretty cool in a way that tech students, art students, everybody can kind of see the benefits of that. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of it. And I left my email up there in case you guys want to ask me some questions. I think that I would be available. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Devin, one more hand for Devin Irete, please. So some amazing ideas of what your kids are capable of and what they're going to go on to do with the tools that you provide them. So thanks again, Devin. A great presentation. And she will be part of the production managerial arts panel, which will take place right after this session. The last thing that we're going to do in our gathering this morning is hear from some administrators. For the past 2 years, we've had administrator panels that met outside of the general session, and the comments that we get on the feedback cards is that those are very valuable sessions, because the administrators are the folks who have a lot of control over what you do and how you're funded and when your classes get scheduled and things like that. And there are, as you know, and I learned when I came to the Department of Education, multiple opportunities for administrators to say no to you. And so what we've done this morning is brought together a group of administrators from various levels of education to talk to you about how they support their AME programs and what their jobs are. And so they're going to be, Shane Schmeichel, who is a school principal, who you are going to meet later on. If you're staying for the demonstration day, he's the principal at Coronado School of the Arts, and he's going to moderate the panel. And this will be an opportunity for them to share what they do. So we have a school site level principal, we have a county level, 2 county level administrators, 3 county level administrators, a district level VAPA and CTE coordinator, and then someone who is a community organizer, someone who is the director of the Creative Sonoma up in Sonoma County. So I'd like to welcome to the stage the administrator panel, and they'll share with you how they support programs, and then there will be an opportunity later for you to, there's going to be a breakout session where you can ask individual questions of these folks. So you want to come on up, please, Shane and group, and we'll move forward with this panel.
Share microphone, sharing microphone.
We're going to strike. Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome. Again, like Jack said, if you're able to stay in San Diego tomorrow, I'm going to start with a shameless plug. Come over to Coronado, spend the day with us at Coronado School of the Arts and at Coronado High School, 9 to 4 tomorrow. You are all invited. I'd like to first start by having everybody in this room thanking our panel for taking time out of their busy schedule to come share some of their information with us today. Thank you for being here. The first question, as you introduce yourselves, please give us a little bit of a snapshot of the journey that you've been on, or one example of a journey that you have been on as you have supported arts, media, and entertainment career technical ed. Hamish, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Hamish Tyler. I'm from the Monterey County Office of Education. I'm the county VAPA coordinator. I'm also the Region 5 VAPA coordinator for my area. I also completely forgot about this panel this morning, and it came as a bit of a shock. But my journey, I started out in middle school. I'm an English teacher, and I went from the public schools into a private school environment in a highly prestigious and very expensive school in Pebble Beach, in which I started a radio program that started out as a 10-watter. It, through various transformations, became a 1,000-watt student-run radio station. It was at one time the most powerful secondary school radio station in the country, and it was completely student-run. I also ran the theater program, and we put on 3 plays and a musical, and every third year we would tour Europe, and we had some extremely interesting experiences. However, at a private school, we never once, in my 30 years there, went through the low periods that my public school peers had with funding issues. And in the private sector, especially folks where the top 1% of folks go to, they never, ever thought of reducing their arts offerings. In fact, during tough times at the Stevenson School, they upped their investments in the arts. That, for me, was a lesson, but I owed so much to my public school background that when I left Stevenson School, I was determined to try to bring a similar experience to the kids in Monterey County and in my region. So I've been working really hard for the last 10 years. We've taken an old dilapidated analog TV system and have converted it into an HD and a PEG system that extends throughout our county and region. And we're starting a CTE AME program in broadcasting, and we've now got about 200, 250 of our students involved in that program. Anyway, that's sort of my journey, and just to remind you that, you know, most of the folks on a national level that make really, really important decisions about our lives politically have gone to those schools of the 1%, and they've all had the arts.
My name is Jeff Schmidt. I am the CT coordinator up in Santa Clara County Office of Education. I'm also a member of the STEAM team, which is a professional development integration team. We do a lot of work in the districts to provide professional development to teachers and administrators. My journey was a bit different. I started out thinking I wanted to be a music teacher. So in Washington State, I went to college to be a K-12 instrumental and choral music teacher. However, I was a very young-looking student. So getting out and doing some student teaching, other things, I looked like one of the students, and I didn't get a lot of instant respect out of them that some of the older teachers got. And I found it very frustrating, and also was really, really passionate about performing music and writing music. So that's what I ended up doing for a good number of years, a couple decades. I was a performer and a musician. I made movies, commercial and corporate movies also. I was sort of the tech guy that ran the AV department at the colleges, and it was kind of a spaz. But what I ended up doing, I ended up playing in a couple bands that were really successful. The English Beat, General Public, you might have heard of some of those bands. I became an engineer in Hollywood, Pro Tools, and was one of the fastest audio engineers in Hollywood. Did a lot of great stuff working with a lot of great artists. And I was really happy doing that, but when it came time to be a dad and a husband, and in my life later, a little bit later than some people start that part of their lives, I didn't want to be a dad that lived on a tour bus and lived in studios, and so I thought, you know, I'm gonna try teaching, even though I never really did it. But when it came time for me to do that, I found out that my interests had changed, my skills had changed, and that sort of core academic music teacher wasn't really what was appealing to me. So I became a CTE video and audio production instructor up in San Jose. I started a program at the Silicon Valley CTE Center, also known as Metro Ed. And in that experience of teaching almost 10 years, I was able to see what students could do with the ability to tell a story and the ability to have a voice. And I was really passionate about integrating content into my video class because my students had trouble writing scripts, and I didn't know how to teach that. So I reached out to English teachers, and I took integrated workshops, and I was in PLCs, and I just was constantly just thirsty to be a really effective teacher. I then started teaching teachers that weren't CTE teachers or even AME teachers or VAPA teachers. I started teaching all teachers that I could get my hands on how to get their students to tell stories and to use digital media to make a project more integrated, more creative, more technical, more engaging for the students, more real. And I found a really big passion within myself to to share what I do in my classroom and to let other people experience those little elements. And every time I did that, I got a piece of their classroom in my brain, and I got better at teaching math and science in my video class. So I actually had a pre and post math test my students take for film production. I had other teachers, some other districts that were teaching multimedia or video production, take my test and use it. So we were actually comparing data and doing all this sort of typical, Michael Fullen PLC stuff that you don't see a lot of CTE teachers doing. So I knew that there's lots of possibilities out there. And as a county CTE coordinator now for 31 districts, almost 300,000 students, I see a huge variety of CTE programs, quality levels all over the place, needing lots of support in a lot of areas. And I know that I think a big area of focus for all of us needs to be funding, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Thanks. My name's Stephen Jackson, and Jack, I really appreciate that promotion you gave me as Assistant Superintendent for CTE. I'm actually just a Director for Career Tech Education Support Services, but I'll happily take the salary that they have. And you know what, quite honestly, it would be great if they had an Assistant Superintendent for College and Career Readiness or that kind of work. But I kind of came to support the arts integration and CTE as a frustrated student, a young person who wasn't a very good athlete, and then my mom thought that I wasn't very coordinated and maybe I'd do well in ballet class. So she threw me in there like 10 years old or something like that, and I cried and said it was sissy stuff, didn't want to do it. And fast forward 15 years later or something like that, I'm in college in the late 70s and early 80s, and dance was pretty cool, and we were doing a lot of fun stuff, and ended up taking 5 years of ballet class and enjoying that tremendously, and did a lot of theater. So, but I wasn't the triple threat, so I wasn't going to make a career out of that, and I was an ag student in agribusiness, so I ended up teaching and discovered being able to do integrated projects and getting students engaged with industry partners in authentic work for them, and found that they worked so much harder for them, and discovered that sort of passion. And then I ended up doing curriculum and then becoming director of career tech at the Sonoma County Office of Education, and found some phenomenal student programs where students were being able to explore their passions and be able to find that passion in the economy, and teachers who kind of got stepped back and helped them explore their passions and then get out of the way as they connect them with industry partners. So my work is really to support that and engage them as a county administrator. I don't have the authority in districts, but we certainly have some de jure or de facto authority around what career tech is, and helping these programs connect students with real work that follows their passion in the economy, and they can make a living wage and enjoy their work and explore their passions. So that's kind of what I do.
Got one?
Okay,
Thank
party
you.
on, Garth.
I'm Kristen Madsen. I am the director of Creative Sonoma, and my journey in this, that brings me to this room, began by learning to play the piano when I was 5 and loving it and thinking that was my future, until I discovered, unlike Stephen, I was not only not a triple threat, I wasn't a single threat. I was not going to have a career as a concert pianist, not for me. But I did learn pretty early on that there was such a thing as the business side of the arts, and believed for certain that I was going to go run a symphony, and that was going to be my future. And I'm delighted I found that opportunity. It turned out not to be symphony, but it definitely turned out to be that the place for me was working on the business side of the arts. I was a booking agent for a modern dance theater based in Salt Lake City, Utah. The most thankless job in the arts ever. If you want to take a cold call from someone calling from Salt Lake City, Utah, saying, hey, you want some modern dance? That was tough, but a good experience, I would say. But I ended up working for a state arts council for a period of time, and a variety of other things, and then decided I wanted to connect closer back to music and the music business, and ended up going to work for the Grammy Awards. where I was for 20 years, which I thought was for-profit music industry. Grammys is a nonprofit membership association, but we certainly worked in and around the music business. And I had the great pleasure to run our membership division for 10 years, which is about 23,000 members in 12 offices all over the country, representing all of the artistic and technical sides of making a record. And then I ran the 2 charitable foundations for the Grammys, a Health and Human Services Foundation for music people who find themselves in crisis, and also a Music Education Foundation. We also did some historic preservation. I left there about 2 years ago and moved to Sonoma, looking for life that was involved in an environment, a physical environment that was nourishing more so than punishing. I love Los Angeles, and we'll go back and visit many times, but it's nice to wake up in the morning in Sonoma County. And I run Creative Sonoma, which is a brand new agency of county government housed in the Economic Development Board, which is important because whether the supervisors knew it or not, when they put us there, it makes a statement to the public that the creative sector and the arts sector contributes to the economy, that it's not a drain on the economy. So we are championing that as loudly as we can. The one story that I'll share to your question about how we have supported AME is something that I did at the Grammys. I didn't call it by that name, but now I know that's what we were doing. I was lucky enough to initiate a program at the Grammy Foundation called Grammy Camp, which is a summertime music industry camp where we brought kids in from all over the country to 3-4 different locations, usually on a college campus, for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And we trained them not on simply being a great musician, but on the business of having a career as a musician. And so these kids got training about what they needed to think about, whether or not they were their own manager, which musicians, as you all know, most likely these days are. What was producing about for them? What kind of legal things did they need to know? Did they want a career as a music attorney, for example, if they weren't going to be that person behind the microphone? So all of the careers surrounding music and that creative process, whether or not you were actually going to be that artist. And I'm delighted to say that we saw sort of the fruition of that. It's a 12-year-old program. Our first year of Grammy Camp, we had a young girl come in who took the stage at Grammy Camp and who was a nominee for Best New Artist on the Grammy stage this year. So we felt like that was sort of a full circle.
So I'm sensing, I don't know, is this on? Okay. I'm sensing some common themes. It's interesting here. We all have some very divergent paths. Mine was as well. My dad used to tease me. He put me in dance classes when I was 3 because I was the kid that ran into everything, tripped over everything, including my own feet. So then I was the product of a really wonderful public school education, in truth. I took art classes in my public school. In my elementary school, we sang. I was in private dance lessons, but the rest of it came from that. I entered theater, was in the performing arts all through my high school career. And I came from a family of teachers, so it was the last thing I wanted to be. But then someone very profoundly said to me, and this happens to, I'm sure, a lot of our students, when I was in high school and I was dancing 6 days a week, performing in the local plays, et cetera, what are you going to do with yourself, starve on Broadway? So decided to go to the total polar opposite, not teaching, not arts, but be a business major. And I ran a hotel restaurant for 9 years in the Bay Area. And after my last child, things were changing. We moved back to the Sacramento area, and a mentor came to me and said, "You're a teacher." And I said, "Oh, they've been telling me that my whole life. I don't want to be a teacher." So found my way into teaching and taught in an urban neighborhood, and the arts are what saved me there. We had no computers to speak of, but I could tell my kids needed to move. They needed to draw. They needed to express themselves. I taught myself how to do iMovie. I was not very computer literate at that time. Taught myself iMovie, taught my kids iMovie, and that kind of made it a really great place for us in the classroom, and it saved all of us on a lot of days. So that passion drove me. I got to work at the central office and teach other teachers how to integrate arts into the classroom. and then through that work became the facilitator for the visual and performing arts. And it was interesting because I wasn't in charge of career tech ed at the time, and the person that was used to tell me all the time, Jackie, there is no industry in arts, media, and entertainment. And I just would look at her and say, okay, sure, but one day I'm gonna have your job. And now I do. So that would be the first way that I support arts, media, and entertainment, has always being an advocate and sort of always continuing to tell the story, whether I was in the role of the lead in that or not. And I just think that always continuing to encourage our teachers, and whether they're arts teachers or multiple subject teachers or CTE teachers, that the arts really do save the lives of children, whether or not we know that those children are going to become in the arts, media, and entertainment field. The skills that they take away are going to serve them no matter where they are.
Good morning, my name is Carl Mueller. I'm currently the superintendent of Coronado Unified School District, and unlike my colleagues on the panel, I didn't find the arts, I didn't find CTE instruction, they found me. I started teaching right out of college. My first experience in a classroom was as an instructional assistant for a charter school for at-risk youth, students that had been removed from public school. I moved to San Luis Obispo County with my wife and got a job working for the juvenile court and community schools there, and quickly learned that, as mentioned earlier, our students needed to feel connected to school, and that the school had to have a culture. And how do you build culture and connections then through the arts and through expression and developing an inclusivity where everyone gets to express his or herself to the best of their abilities. When we left San Luis Obispo County, moved back down to San Diego, I returned to the charter program, and through those understandings at that court and community school program, designed for my school in partnership with my colleagues, internship program, as Devin mentioned earlier, got my students out of the classroom and into industries of interest to try to design and develop their definition of 13th grade. And that was our motto. What would you like to do for 13th grade? Career tech ed programs and the arts in particular really provided students their voice. I became an assistant principal at a high school that had a great art program already established. After my first year as assistant principal, the principal decided to move to Northern California, and they asked me to lead that school. I had an amazing mentor that was running the arts program at the time, but to save money and to design efficiencies, the superintendent also told me that I was going to be the CTE director. And that's when CTE found me. Through those experiences, I learned how to really celebrate the pathway programs and how students needed to understand a sequence and then to have a capstone experience that provided them with some industry experience. Even if it wasn't going to design or define their 13th grade, it was going to give them opportunities to make purposeful decisions when they graduated from high school. I left that school and became principal at the Canyon Crest Academy here in San Diego that has the Envision program, which is a conservatory program, and really just continued to support those two pieces that I really feel my whole career has been about connections and culture, and that's what our students need. And so CCA had a kind of a motto, which is keep Canyon Crest Academy weird. And really what that was the teachers modeling for the students their own creativity and their own willingness to be themselves. And that permeates through an entire school campus. I've returned to Coronado, and now I'm the superintendent at Coronado Unified, and I continue to do my best to support our CTE program and the arts in general. We have a strong partnership with a foundation in Coronado, the Coronado Schools Foundation, and they have a STEAM focus. So every opportunity to come out and celebrate the arts, to celebrate pathway programs for students, are opportunities to connect students to their peers, to the campus, and to make sure that they have a focus as they move forward.
So in your lives here, you've had opportunities and experiences experiences that now put you in a position where you can have impact. So in your leadership role that you're currently playing, what is a hot topic issue that you are working on to be able to impact more students' positive experiences? And in this case, a hot topic issue can be a strength. It can be something that you're really supporting and putting a lot of time and energy behind, or it can be an issue, a weakness that you are working on and trying to overcome. And for this question, we'll just popcorn around and you can share some ideas, things that you're currently working on in the role you play.
Currently, we're working with a charter school, the Monterey County Office of Education, that we helped create several years ago that was to be arts-based. We are going through some growing pains as to whether or not the school and some of the parents want it to be more comprehensive. And I think our challenge right now is to get the charter school back on track in the arts and to be a true career tech education school as it was intended to be. But there's a lot of push and pull with our local community over the direction of the charter. And I think as we see more and more of this with the current administration moving toward the chartering experience, that we probably will need to be in the vanguard and defining exactly what it is in career tech, visual and performing arts, and in the public sector, what it is that we expect out of our charter schools. And I think for me, coming from the private sector, a lot of times folks in the public sector feel entitled, and that when money dries up, funding sources dry up, that we give up. And we can't do that. We need to develop all the resources we can to continue the programs that we have. And frankly, coming from several other conferences, I think we're under the gun again, and we need to be innovative, and we need to think of those funding sources to continue our work. That's the challenge for me.
We've got a mission in our CT Support Services Department that talks about transforming the educational experience for youth. We walk around, or we visit on campuses, and too often we see students in rows with hoodies up and not really engaged in authentic sort of learning or passionate learning for themselves. And so we believe that that kind of experience can really make a difference. So we work with teachers and administrators throughout our county to be able to support these engaging, integrated types of activities. Some of the best that we see are in arts, media, and entertainment types of programs. Students are engaged in that work, and one program in particular, they're doing a tremendous amount of work with several different types of industry sectors or careers that fit in the arts, media, and entertainment industry, such that students can follow those passions. And they are an integrated program and a phenomenal program, and work very hard to engage with industry partners and engage them in that learning. What we try to do is to advocate for that at various levels. We received a Career Pathways Trust grant several years ago, and that really supported education. And now what we see sometimes coming from the state level is funding that just sort of continues to promote us back into our silos, such that we do career tech, and then there's regular core academic work that goes on. And we don't try to encourage integration. And where we see those schools that embrace that passion, linked learning, academy models, other types of programs that connect students with relevant learning, that's the kind of support we want to do. So we advocate at that level. It's not so much about building more CTE classes, it's about building relevance for all students. So those are the things that I think are the real challenges and passionate things that we're working on, but they're not easy.
Creative Sonoma is just engaging right now in a way that I think is completely appropriate for a non-education group in partnership with the County Office of Education to do a county-wide assessment of the state of arts education in the county schools. We're a decent-sized county, 500,000 people. Some of you may know this, we have 40 school districts. So, weird. So why do we have so many school districts, and how do we talk to them, and how do we get them to give us information? That's been a big challenge in this, but we have, as I say, had the great luck of partnering with SCO on this. In doing that, we've also brought together arts organizations that are very interested in the state of arts education. They want to do what they're doing in schools and in their facilities, but they know they can't be looked to as the replacement, so they want to know what's happening. And we're also engaging arts funders and non-arts funders as to why do you make those choices, so that when we get this assessment done, we'll be able to come back and say, all right, we think we know what's happening in our schools, but we probably know it anecdotally. If we have real data, then we can look at it to really figure out what do we have the resources to do with that. So we're in the really beginning stages of how I think we're going to move forward on this. We have Windsor High in the house. These guys are ahead of us by light years in the sense of what they're doing in their own districts, so we have a good example to look to. We're working with West Ed to do the research on it for us and come back and make some basic recommendations for us. But the critical piece to all this that I think is most important to us is that our goal is to look at the results through the lens of equity. I was just at an event earlier last week where a demographer had shown on a map, color-coded, where people live in Sonoma County based on ethnicity and race. And I'll tell you what, we are a segregated community based on where we live, and that impacts where the kids are going to school, and that impacts, as you all know, I'm preaching to the choir here. So the priority for us with these results, as we know as we assume they're going to come out, is to say, if we have limited resources, let's put them where the impact is going to be the greatest, and that will be definitely through the lens of equity of access.
I'm going to add another layer question to this before we go on. The question about how do we as AME teachers advocate with the leaders and with districts and other organizations so that all students have access to these experiences. So add that in if it makes sense with what you're thinking about.
I was going to use the word awareness to kind of sum up a lot of the stuff that we're doing in Santa Clara County. Part of that is bringing all the CTE programs up, getting them to really be aware of some of the model programs throughout the state, what's happening, what are the best practices that are happening out there. So my superintendent supported me and some of the members of the STEAM team to go out and look and see. In fact, we were at USC's garage just a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Erica Moll yesterday gave that great presentation. So we want CTE teachers to see what innovative learning spaces look like, to understand some of the key shifts from the Common Core instructional pedagogies that they can really take away quickly and increase the quality of their instruction, but also to build awareness in the CTE programs as to how they fit into the whole K-12 system. We see a lot of VAPA teachers and CTE AME teachers trying to figure out how do we dance on the same dance floor. So doing things like creating 4-year programs of studies where the basic foundations of the art are down there, and the first couple of years of those four-year programs and the concentrator and capstone programs come in to complete those pathways. Also awareness of the funding problems that we're all facing, and there's a lot of money out there that has been thrown into CTE and supporting and ramping up programs, increasing the quality of the programs that exist and building new pathways, but as we all know, they're grant funding situations. So I'm also an LCAP reviewer for our county, so I get the opportunity to look at districts' LCAPs and review those and to work with the districts to make sure that they have everything they need. And I'm seeing a lot of lack of CTE in the LCAPs, and with the grant money phasing away and the sustainability ramping up, if we don't see CTE in the LCAP, then we know what's going to happen to those programs. So we have to build awareness on, with our community, our parent engagement, the teacher groups, everybody that's ever having a meeting, there should be an LCAP discussion there and how to promote the arts and the CTE programs. The other side of the awareness coin is community awareness of what the CTE programs are, and how CTE programs, in my mind, are the ones that are really preparing students for careers in college. The best college prep classes there are the CTE programs that I see. So we're trying to get districts to see, the high level superintendent offices to see examples where they're not necessarily a UC A to G graduation requirement. Maybe they add to that, so there's more ways that a student can graduate, or that they see the value in industry certifications, they see the value in college credits earned while you're in high school, and the huge value of a portfolio and student work. So I wanted to sum it up, just those thoughts.
So not only do we need to be educators, but advocates.
Advocates, yes.
I got it. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That took the words right out of my mouth. I continue advocating for your programs and connect the dots for your district and site administrators, understanding how project-based learning in a video film class in middle school is also teaching leadership skills, is also teaching literacy skills, and help the administrators who may not have time to come in and actually ask for a lesson plan and align the work of the student to the end result. And that college and career readiness piece, walk us through, continue celebrating, advocating for your programs, and then get creative. Bring opportunities and ideas to the district for creative funding streams. Recently, our district, we serve approximately 35% active military, and we received a DODEA grant for arts integration. Those monies wouldn't have been available if our CTE and our arts advocates weren't pointing us in those directions and saying this is something that we would qualify for. So really understanding the need to advocate for your programs and then connect the dots and show how this is so much more than a dance critique. These students are learning valuable skills here.
Thank you. And we're down to our just last couple minutes. You can go ahead, and then Stephen.
Sure. I think one of the things we're working on in our district at the district level is a strategic plan for the whole district. Really, all the teachers are involved in being part of having a voice and understanding what that looks like. That sort of weaves multiple budget sources. I think thinking about your budgets at whether you're at the site level or the district level or the county level is really important. We aren't going to have any pot of money for any guaranteed period of time. And then from that, helping each one of those teachers become advocates, which I think is something everyone's touched on, because they can tell their story better than I can. So they're with the students every day in the classroom. They can tell the story to their principal or to that parent much better than I can. So giving them all the tools they need. And a lot of work for me with our principals, understanding what that funding looks like, why it's important. So I think it's multi-level planning and multi-level advocacy across the board to make sure that every stakeholder understands what's at stake and how to keep it there.
I think it's also important as AME teachers to broaden the thinking about what arts, media, and entertainment involves. Those programs that I've seen struggle and not do well have stayed sort of focused on one particular kind of discipline or area. Those that broaden their students' experience, moving into marketing, media design, performance art, all kinds of things. And then take that work where you talked about project-based learning, do those projects such that it has an impact in your local community beyond the school. One of our programs does design thinking work, and they use that process to reimagine public spaces in our community and present that to our city councils and our board of supervisors, such that the learning that is happening in that classroom that other people can start to see, they can identify those skills, the public begins to see. That not only engages through the LCAP, through those stakeholder processes that most of our districts, we hope, are doing, you build some natural advocates for the learning that you're doing with your students. Again, it's not so much about staying focused, it's about learning and helping to discover their passions and being able to do that work. So broaden that concept and build in your own advocacy beyond the classroom. Get your students out there doing those kinds of projects for folks. That's a much better advocacy, I think, than you going saying we really need this and it's very important.
So through connections in the classroom and outside of the classroom and outside of the school community, we can engage our students, as Brian said earlier, in becoming leaders, which really mean they lead themselves to success. Panel, it is now your opportunity to thank all of our hardworking AME teachers here for everything that they do.
Thank you.
Thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to share some of your ideas with you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.